Bijna middernacht en nog is het niet welletjes. Het laatste VPRO-programma van vanavond komt vanuit het digitale web. Dat is gesponnen op een Hilversums jongenskamertje. Hier is Web.
Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself.
Hallo, welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van Web vanuit het digitale zenuwcentrum van de VPRO. We gaan vandaag naar Rusland, vandaar de drukte. Het valt niet mee om een connectie te leggen. Waarom Rusland? In de media zijn heel veel verhalen, doen veel verhalen de ronde als maffia, armoede, de talende macht van Yeltsin en daar willen wij het fijne van weten. Maar voordat we de digitale snelweg opchasen, gaan we eerst eventjes kijken naar een verhaaltje over Bruce Sterling.
Are you expecting the digital revolution, if there's ever going to be one, or if we're already in it? Is it going to be brought about by the people or by the government in the USSR, the former USSR?
I think it's going to be brought about by corporations. I mean, all these guys aren't doing it just because they're sort of good-hearted. I think they're doing it because they're personally ambitious. I think every one of these little Russian characters that I talk to sort of envisions himself as the Russian Bill Gates. You know, it's like Napoleon's soldiers. They all have a marshal's baton in their knapsack, you know. They're in it for the money. They're not like, you know, these little guys from Hackdick or something who are sort of running around, you know, being digital anarcho-syndicalists or something. I mean, these are characters who want to build entire new sort of commercial empires and are really struggling to, you know, build a workable capitalist economy where they can get richer than anybody's business in the minimum amount of time. And, you know, there's a certain advantage in the computer industry in Russia because it wasn't really all that well developed before, you know, perestroika and the breakup of the CIS. So if you're trying to go into business in computers, you don't have to destroy the old socialist structure first. You can just sort of go out there and start selling boxes. So there's a lot of enthusiasm about it, and these fellows are very ambitious. I mean, they have big plans. Russia's a big place. It's big, you know. It's not Holland. I mean, we're talking a sixth of the Earth's land surface, and you know, you'll see guys who, you know, are operating out of some little cubbyhole of an office who have plans to sell computers, you know, all the way from Vladivostok to St. Petersburg. I mean, they just got these enormous scale dreams that they hope to fulfill. They're sort of wildly ambitious.
But if they're all in it for the money, is it working?
Well, you know, the people I talked to seem to think it was working. I mean, a lot of these people are guys who, you know, used to be some kind of low-level government bureaucrat or something who's gone into private enterprise. And, you know, there's a lot of difference between writing some dumb program for Gosplan and actually marketing your own goods. I mean, they really feel like they have some kind of opportunity. Now, they do complain a lot. They complain about the infrastructure, how you can't mail computers from one place to, you know, and the other. If you want a computer, you sort of have to go to Moscow and carry it home in a string bag. And there's a lot of difficulties. The telephone system doesn't work. Mafia is always hitting people up for protection money. The government is barely there, sort of barely in control. Moscow is a zoo. I mean, it's just a wild scene. It's a post-revolutionary society in a way that, you know, the Czech Republic, I don't think, ever would be. I mean, in the Czech situation, you just had this sort of velvet revolution where they just got, the bad people went away. They just lost heart and wouldn't send the tanks in, and after that their little puppet regime just collapsed in a heap of dust. But in Russia, these were the empire. I mean, this is an empire which has fallen, and they lost the Cold War, and they sort of lost it big time. And just the oddest things happened there. Like a 9-year-old child tried to sell me a lump of gold in Red Square. And there's just extremities of behavior, just wild, peculiar things, gigantic garage sales with 150,000 people in an open-air market just grabbing things and stuffing them into bags. You know, there's gangsters all over the place, you know, big, tough, burly guys in sports jackets and Adidas who are sort of shoving people off the pavement. But, you know, judging by what I've seen, I suspect, yeah, they actually will kind of keep it together for a while. I mean, it's going to be a wild East scene for a long time. But sooner or later, I would imagine the situation has to stabilize. I mean, either they're going to have a workable economy where you can actually make money, or else it's going to be a Yugoslavia as big as Eurasia. And you know, there are a lot of bright people there, and I think, you know, if you look at Yugoslavia, there's not a lot to be gained by acting like Yugoslavia. And nobody wants a country with 30,000 nuclear weapons to act like Yugoslavia. So everybody sort of has a vested interest in trying to, you know, make sure the Russians don't go completely off the deep end. So, you know, I would feel moderately optimistic about their prospects. Yes.
Je had een ongeluk, of wat was het nou?
Ja, ik heb hier een bijzonder onsmakelijk plaatje, mag ik wel
Het
zeggen.
is maar goed dat het een
van,
beetje grove korrel is, anders zouden we hier te plaatsen.
Iemand die in zijn eigen auto kapotgeschoten is. The remains of Mr. Berezovski's driver, dus de chauffeur van de directeur van Logovas. Die door gangsters in zijn auto is neergeknald.
Björn?
Ja.
Wat is dit?
Nou, ik weet het niet, het is in het Russisch. Dus ik heb geen idee wat die zijn, maar het ziet er heel officieel uit.
Het schijnt over Tsjernobyl te gaan. Kun jij dit lezen?
This KGB document, this KGB is Committee for the State Security of USSR from 21st of April 79. It's about the faults in the construction of Chernobyl.
Het gaat over de fout in de constructie van de
Chernobyl power stations. It says here, for example, there was some faults, so they couldn't do it continuously, so there were cracks because of that in the foundation. So it was not one
dus
mess of the concrete.
De keldervloer was al gebarsten voordat de centrale al werkte.
Hey, handtekening van het offer.
Ja.
Voor je verzameling.
Voor zijn mysterieuze dood.
Yeah. No, before he became general secretary, he was the head of the KGB.
Menno, jij hebt een aantal berichten in nieuwsgroepen geplaatst en je hebt een aantal e-mails verstuurd naar mensen.
Ja, ik heb 3 citaten van broer Sterling in briefvorm neergeschreven en gepost in nieuwsgroepen en als persoonlijke e-mail naar mensen opgestuurd met de vraag of ze daarop wilden reageren.
Ja, je hebt reacties gekregen, zie ik.
которые сняты в аргинском заказнике. Боярышницу здесь можно собирать руками. Как объясняют специалисты, подобное нашествие бабочки происходит в годы повышенной активности Солнца. Это самый крупный всплеск популяции.
Contemporary Fine Arts Gallery, first hall.
Maar dit is toch wel aardig hier, de Beer Lovers Party, de partij van bierliefhebbers. Het is meer dan een grap.
Ja.
Ze hebben een feestje gegeven in een Moskouse nachtclub en ze doelen op een toppositie in politiek en economie. Hier kunnen we een plaatje zien van de partijleider meneer Kalatschev. Nou, als het echt een bierdrinker is, moet die ladders zat zijn. Nou, het valt nog wel mee. Het zit er wel redelijk...
maar hij zit wel in een bar.
In uit het mannetje. Maar hij is op de goede plek gefotografeerd, dat is duidelijk.
George Bush talks about CNN as being a better information provider than the CIA.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think the CIA ought to be abolished. I think they're a complete joke. I mean, we've had this trial of this, high-ranking CIA guy who's been in Soviet pay for, I don't know, Ames. He was completely in the pocket of the KGB for years during, the height of the Cold War and afterward. And we still won. So as far as I'm concerned, the CIA has been like an actual negative asset to American national security. I don't think they've fulfilled any kind of useful role at all. In fact, I think they've done tremendous harm over the years. So I think they just ought to be junked. As for CNN, I mean, CNN's a peculiar enterprise. I mean, George Bush may talk very nicely about CNN under some circumstances, but I would bet pretty good money that when the bomb started falling on Baghdad and it was being shown on international television by CNN reporters, that George Bush kind of wished they hadn't been there. I mean, the mere fact that they exist is enough to have a tremendous effect on society. And of course I'm not surprised that Silvio Berlusconi would want his own CNN, and I'm sure he would build an Italian language CNN and broadcast it worldwide if he thought he could do it, but he's going to have a lot on his plate being Prime Minister of Italy. It's going to be a little difficult to get really involved in media entrepreneurship while you're also trying to run a government. I was in Italy just a few months ago. I was on a 5-city tour of Italy, and they were very concerned about the fact that their new prime minister is a media mogul. And I told them, look, when the government had eaten all your televisions, you weren't complaining, but now that the televisions have eaten your government, suddenly you're becoming very concerned. So there's a certain irony there. But, they reap what they sow. And I'm not surprised that a country's prime minister should be somebody who has a lot of ties to the communications industry. I mean, in the 19th century, the railroads were very powerful politically, the telegraphs were very powerful politically. This is a commercial age. It's an information age. Of course media is going to become very powerful politically. I mean, telecommunications is, I think it's the 3rd largest global enterprise. There's oil, there's tourism, and there's telecommunications. So, there are plenty of countries whose politics are based entirely on oil. So why shouldn't there be some countries whose politics are based entirely on telecommunications? Internet is sort of every single thing that television isn't. I mean, television is too centralized, it's too government regulated, it's a 40-year-old analog technology. Internet is anarchic, it's global, there is no center to it, and it's entirely digital. So I think it has sort of profound advantages. And I would suspect that if you are a person who is seriously politically active, yes, you're going to run CNN because you're going to want to know what the mass audience is watching. But you yourself are going to be on some kind of data discussion list, the congressional activists discussion, whatever. I mean, you're going to be using computer networks to actually get the data on which you make serious political decisions. I mean, I like to think of the internet as being like language. I mean, nobody owns language. It's like the Dutch language isn't owned. It's not like a Dutch language board where if you decide to use Dutch, you have to pay them a license fee. But you could still use the Dutch language to persuade someone to do something bad or good or whatever. I mean, you could use it as a medium of activism. It's just that it isn't owned. It's not owned by the government. It's not owned by the corporation. There's no president of Dutch. There's no chief executive officer of Dutch. There's no board of directors of Dutch. You can't buy shares in Dutch. The government does teach you how to speak Dutch, and it will teach you how to write Dutch a little bit, but after that it's just up to you. And I think you could say much the same about internet. The idea that the government is going to arrive and sort of give you internet, and that you're going to have all this power and you're going to be able to just use that, is not a real idea. It's a bogus idea. It's as if the government were to show up and like teach you Dutch and make you into a Dutch master poet. That's not going to happen. It's something you're going to have to develop yourself.
2 weken geleden was de vraag of we binnen zouden kunnen komen via de computer bij de Tweede en Eerste Kamer. En inmiddels kan dat via de digitale stad. Moet je even hier komen staan, kun je met me meekijken. Digitale stad. Overheid. Wegwijs in het loketparlement. Trefwoorden. Wat kunt u verwachten? Het parlement. Wie is wie? Werkwijze, organisatie, in behandeling. Laat van u horen, uw mening, postbus, etc. etc. Wat willen we weten? Wie is wie? Want we willen natuurlijk Sharon Dijkstra een berichtje sturen. Daar komt ze aan. Mevrouw S. Dijkstra. 71, vanaf 17 mei. Tweede Kamerlid voor de PvdA. Ze is de jongste Kamerlid alle tijden. Wat willen we doen? We willen contact opnemen. Oh, dit is al voor ons ingevuld. Het is geachte Sharon Dijkstra. We zijn blij dat we je nu ook via het internet kunnen bereiken. Dus zo gaan we de kloof tussen burger en politiek verkleinen. Hou ons op de hoogte van alle digitale commentaren. Vriendelijke groeten. Web. Bob Fosko.
Ja, connection established. Hello.
We hebben nu aan de lijn een Dimitri, waar we nu mee gaan chatten. Of tenminste, waar zit hij, weet je dat? Menno?
Ja, hij is van Freenet in Moskou.
Ons ontstaat nu een hele leuke, interessante spraakverwarring, want we hebben contact met Freenet, dus wij denken in onze naïviteit met het net van de vrijheid. Maar het is education, en wat Freenet betekent, is een afkorting van? Even kijken. Fundamental Research, Education and Engineering Network. Nou, de vraag die wij hebben gesteld is, de vraag van Bruce Sterling is Moskou met een zoo is, een dierentuin. En Dimitri zegt, we hebben nog even gezegd van, wat bedoel je, zoo? En heeft de bureau gezegd, nou, een animal park. In het sens dat er heel veel dingen gebeuren, maar dat er geen echte leider is of zo. En Dimitri zegt, jij bedoelt dat er alleen maar dieren leven hier?
Ja, en hij zit er wel weer zo'n...
hij zit er in jas.
Zo'n lachenbekje achter, dus hij vindt het wel grappig.
Hij vindt het grappig, hij is in voor een grap. Het gaat zo traag als dikke stront, hè? Jongen.
Hij begint nu als eerste roman op het internet. Ja, nou, nu begrijp ik het wel.
Nou, vertel je het eens dan?
Ja. En zij zegt, ik heb ook niet zoveel informatie over de doeleinden die onze regering naast heeft.
Het is dus ook heel moeilijk om daar een oordeel over te geven.
Dus, het is moeilijk om een oordeel te geven over de vraag of ze controle hebben over de situatie hier of niet.
We zijn nu ongeveer een kleine 20 minuten aan het praten met Dimitri in Moskou. Wat opvalt is dat iedereen met wie we spreken via het net heel graag serieus genomen willen worden. Dat is natuurlijk heel logisch. Maar we hebben te maken met een specialist, een technisch specialist, die het netwerk onderhoudt. Ik heb dit tijdschrift gevonden bij de bladenhandelaar. Het is Mediamatic. En daarin stond er zat een CD-ROM van de Doors of Perception.
Technology subverts identity. Technology subverts identity. The book is dead. New media are good. Computers create a better society.
The infrastructure that used to be there was information that was stored in people. Usually, information is stored in people. Now it's stored in procedures. It's stored in my handbook. It's stored in all kinds of papers. And I have to be able to navigate through procedures and papers and whatever to be able to live in society.
The key image that I'm proposing is that interactive technologies and even the business environment supporting their development and their distributions are socio-technological projections of how the brain and the central nervous system develop.
While the new media emerge, the old humanistic world of hand, word, and man perish.
New media are good.
We've had a tyranny of communication methods that have taught us that the only viable way of communicating with people has been through a written form where one idea follows another. What I'm proposing is that we should think much more in terms of network structures and tree structures and really go with the way that your brain actually thinks.
Kijk, hij heeft ook een bril op, zie je? Zie je eens, kijk. Jurre?
Jo.
Even aansluiten dit. Videospelletje. Dit is een nieuw spelletje of zo?
Ja, dat gaat gewoon gemaakt worden.
En wat is er bijzonder aan?
This is a prototype board. There's 8 chips on this, 4 meg each, which makes it a 32 meg game, the biggest game ever. This 32 megs allows us to do a variety of action and a variety of backgrounds. We have snow levels, jungle levels,
the pyramid type levels,
the cave level,
the forest levels,
mines,
the industrial level,
and underground factories, all kinds of bizarre places that you wouldn't expect to find on an island.
Yeah, it does. We've got a bunch of guys that call it goodies. These guys help you out. We got Ramby, who's a rhinoceros who bashes through some walls, helps you find some hidden areas. We got Winky the frog. He's bad. He can jump on top of like
Espresso either.
Yeah, we got Espresso. That's the ostrich, a flying ostrich with these little bitty wings and goes flapping along the top of the screen. We have a lot of other special effects we do as well. On the snow level, we have 12 different layers of snow going back and forth. We have forest levels with parallax scrolls for dimension in the game.
Dat vind je wel mooi, hè, Björn?
Ja, dat vind ik wel
Godzijdank. Met dat soort kinderen moet je een programma maken. Jongen. Kom op nou. God, doe spelen. Zo, hier heb ik een kinderlaptop. Dit is bekroond speelgoed. Dat wil ik nog wel eens eventjes zien. Hallo. Geef het nummer van een spel. Missende letter, knipperend woord, galgje, daar hou ik van. 0, 3. Hij koudt alles voor. Een galgje. Niveau nummer 1. Raad het woord. Nee. Nee. Nee.